ASEAN unity highlighted in push for greater Malaysia-Indonesia partnership. Aid organizations urge unhindered access to freezing Gaza. Salam Malaysia Madani. You're watching World Today and I'm Renee Fong. Malaysia welcomes direct investments from Indonesian companies and encourages strategic collaborations such as mergers between companies owned by Malaysian and Indonesian entities. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said that this initiative will further strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. Explaining further, the Premier said he raised this matter during a courtesy visit from Sinar Mas Chairman Frankie Osman Wijaja and his delegation. He also informed them that in the context of Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship this year, the success of infrastructure development across various countries requires confidence and strong cooperation among ASEAN companies. The Prime Minister also said that Sinar Mas is one of Indonesia's leading business groups operating in 7 key sectors, namely pulp and paper, agriculture and food, financial services, real estate, telecommunications, energy and infrastructure, and healthcare services. Aid organizations have demanded safe and unhindered aid access in war-torn Gaza, racked by hunger and where babies are freezing to death, even as more hospitals face closure amid fuel shortages. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society said heavy rain and flooding have ravaged the makeshift shelters in Gaza, leaving thousands with up to 30 centimeters of water inside their damaged tents. It said the dire weather conditions were exacerbating the unbearable conditions, pointing out that many families were left clinging on to survival in makeshift camps without even the most basic necessities, such as blankets. Citing the United Nations, the agency highlighted the deaths of 8 newborn babies who had been living in tents without warmth or protection from the rain and falling temperatures. Those deaths underscore the critical severity of the humanitarian crisis in the area. The agency also stressed that the closure of the main Rafah border crossing last May had a dramatic impact on the humanitarian situation, with only a trickle of aid currently entering Gaza. It reiterated its call to grant safe and unhindered access to humanitarians to let them provide life-saving assistance. The Doctors Without Borders charity meanwhile warned that 3 large hospitals in the south of Gaza were on the verge of closing due to a lack of fuel. This situation is threatening the lives of hundreds of patients who depend on electricity to stay alive. Meanwhile, a series of Israeli airstrikes killed at least 14 people in the latest violence to ravage the already devastated Palestinian territory. Gaza Civil Defense Agency said at least 5 people were killed and several wounded in an airstrike in the house of Bagot family in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City. At least 3 people were killed in another strike targeting the house of Al-Bana family in the central city of Deir al-Balah. A strike in Gaza City killed another 5 people, while a strike on the house of Weshaf family in Al-Burej refugee camp killed a child. People searched through the rubble of the house to salvage what they could. The latest strikes came as mediators Qatar, Egypt and the United States brokered negotiations between Israel and Hamas in Doha for a deal to end the fighting in Gaza and secure the release of hostages. And according to figures from the territory's health ministry, which the United Nations considers reliable, Israel's offensive has killed 45,936 people in Gaza, the majority of them civilians. The United Nations envoy to Syria has warned the country's new authorities against making mistakes that would imperil the political transition underway after decades of rule under fallen Bashar al-Assad. Envoy Geir Pedersen said current decisions will determine the future for a long time to come, adding that there are great opportunities and real dangers. He said Syria and the international community need to get the next phase right. Opposition forces led by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group toppled Assad on 8th December in the culmination of a lightning offensive after years of stalemate in more than a decade of civil war. As he seeks to unify the shattered country, Syria's new leader, Ahmad al-Shara, has vowed to dissolve armed groups, including his Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. He also said it could take up to 4 years to hold elections, and he wants to convene a national dialogue conference to map out the transition. To prepare for this dialogue, the new leader wants to set up a committee that reflects the varied sectors of Syrian society. Pedersen welcomed word of this preparatory committee and said the process must not be rushed. He said there are tremendous opportunities for building a foundation for lasting peace and stability in Syria, but missteps or missed opportunities could pose risks to Syria's future and plant seeds of instability. On a related note, US-backed Kurdish forces who control an autonomous region in northeastern Syria said they had told the new Damascus authorities that they did not want to break away from the rest of the country. The commander of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, Mazlum Abdi, said they agreed there needs to be integrity in the Syrian territory and they reject any division projects that threaten the country's unity. He spoke following a meeting he described as positive between Kurdish leaders and the Damascus authorities late last month, and after weeks of deadly clashes between the Syrian Democratic Forces and Turkish-backed groups in northern Syria. He said they support the efforts of the new administration for there to be stability in Syria to pave the way towards building constructive dialogue between Syrians. Thus, he said it is the responsibility of the new administration to intervene in order for there to be a ceasefire throughout Syria. Syria's Kurds control much of the oil-rich northeast of the country, where they have enjoyed de facto autonomy during much of the civil war since 2011. A Russian strike on the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia killed at least 13 people and injured 13 others, one of the deadliest single air attacks for weeks in the 3-year war. Moscow has ramped up its strikes on Ukraine since the onset of winter, casting some of the attacks as retaliation for Kiev firing on Russian territory with Western-supplied weapons. Ukraine's Interior Ministry said the Russians conducted 2 strikes with guided aerial bombs on the city of Zaporizhzhia. It said they exploded among crowds of people. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described the bombardment as cruel and called for the world to rally around Ukraine and against Russia to bring about a lasting peace. He accused Russia of deliberately targeting civilians, saying that there is nothing more cruel than launching aerial bombs on a city, knowing that ordinary civilians will suffer. Zaporizhzhia had a pre-war population of around 700,000 and lies around 35 kilometers from the front line in southern Ukraine. The bombardment came hours after Ukrainian drones hit an oil depot that supplies Russia's air force hundreds of kilometers behind the front line, triggering a blaze that claimed the lives of 2 Russian firefighters. Gunmen launched an attack on the presidential complex in Chad's capital, N'Djamena, sparking a battle that left 18 attackers and 1 security personnel member dead, while several others were injured. Several security sources said an armed commando opened fire inside the presidency around 7:45 p.m. local time before being overpowered by the presidential guard. All roads leading to the presidency were blocked and tanks could be seen on the streets. As civilians rushed out of the city centre in cars and motorcycles, armed police were seen at several points in the district. The government said 19 people were killed in the fighting, of which 18 were members of the 24-strong group that launched the assault. Hours after the shooting, government spokesman and Foreign Minister Abdurrahman Kolamala said the situation is completely under control and the destabilization attempt was put down. Still ahead, suspected killer of Cambodian politician arrested. Details right after this. Police in Cambodia have arrested a former Thai Marine over the fatal shooting of a Cambodian opposition politician in a brazen attack in downtown Bangkok. Lim Kim Ya was shot dead on Tuesday by a gunman on a motorbike as he arrived in the Thai capital from the Cambodian city of Siem Reap by bus, accompanied by his French wife. Thai police issued a warrant for the suspected shooter, and Cambodia later said the man had been detained in Battambang province, which borders Thailand. Cambodian police named the suspect as Ekalak Pianoi and said he would be returned to Thailand without giving a timetable. Earlier, Sanong Sangmani, police chief for the area of Bangkok, where the shooting happened, said they had little information about the suspect except that he worked as a motorbike taxi driver. Lim Kim Ya became an opposition member of Cambodia's parliament following an election in 2013 in which Hun Sen's ruling party almost lost to its then rival, the Cambodia National Rescue Party. Scores of Cambodian opposition activists have fled to Thailand in recent years to avoid alleged repression at home. Some were arrested and deported back to the country. Lebanon's parliament will try to elect a president today, with officials seeing better chances of success in a political landscape shaken by Israel's war with Hezbollah. The post has been vacant since Michel Aoun's term ended in October 2022. None of the groups in the 128-seat parliament have enough seats to impose their choice, and they have so far been unable to agree on a consensus candidate. Momentum appeared to be building behind Army Chief General Joseph Aoun, as Hezbollah's preferred candidate Sulaiman Frangeh withdrew his candidacy and declared his support for the military commander, along with a growing number of other lawmakers. One of the Lebanese politicians said Western and Arab contacts with Lebanese factions had intensified with the aim of securing the election of Aoun, who commands the Lebanese military. However, Aoun remained short of the 86 votes he needs, with the Iran-backed Hezbollah and its ally, the Amal Group, led by Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, among those still opposing him. Other candidates in focus include Jihad Azor, a senior International Monetary Fund official who formerly served as finance minister. Poland will hold a presidential election on 18th May, with the governing pro-EU coalition hoping its candidate will succeed outgoing Conservative Andrzej Duda. Parliamentary Speaker Szymon Hołownia said the ballot to select the next president will take place on 18th May this year, adding that if necessary, a runoff would be held on 1st June. A second round will take place if no candidate wins more than 50% of votes in the first round. Relations between Duda, who is close to the Nationalist Law and Justice opposition party, and the government have been difficult difficult since Prime Minister Donald Tusk's coalition swept to power in 2023. Duda has since vetoed most of the government's legislative initiatives and helped prolong the judicial chaos introduced under the previous Law and Justice administration. The Law and Justice Party led the government from 2015 until 2023, when it lost power to Tusk's coalition, which includes his Civic Coalition as well as the smaller Third Way and Left parties. Duda will leave office in August after the maximum 2 presidential terms allowed. The current election front-runner is Civic Coalition candidate Rafal Zraskowski, who had received around 36% of votes according to opinion polls. European leaders have warned Donald Trump against threatening sovereign borders after the US president-elect refused to rule out military action to take Greenland. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Trump's comments had sparked notable incomprehension among EU leaders. Trump set off new alarm bells on Tuesday at a news conference when he refused to rule out military intervention over the Panama Canal and Greenland, both of which he has said he wants the United States to control. In Berlin, Scholz convened a press conference at short notice and stressed that the inviolability of borders is a fundamental principle of international law. Scholz reiterated Berlin's position that borders must not be moved by force and that Trump's latest outburst had caused uneasiness among European governments. Scholz noted that the principle of sovereign borders applies to every country, whether in the East or the West. Greenland has been autonomous since 1979 and has its own flag, language, and institutions. However, justice, monetary, defense, and foreign affairs all remain under Danish control. At least 5 people have been killed in rampaging wildfires around Los Angeles, with firefighters overwhelmed by the speed and ferocity of multiple blazes. More than 1,000 buildings have burned in fires that have broken out around America's second biggest city, forcing tens of thousands of people from their homes. Hurricane-force winds whipped up fireballs that leapt from house to house in the upmarket Pacific Palisades area, incinerating a swath of California's most desirable real estate favored by Hollywood celebrities. Los Angeles County Fire Chief Anthony Marone said his crews were overwhelmed by the scale and speed of the unfolding disaster. He noted that his team was doing the very best it can, but there is not enough fire personnel in LA County between all the departments to handle the situation. The fire raging in Pacific Palisades had consumed around 16,000 acres as of yesterday afternoon. A separate 10,600-acre fire was burning around Altadena, north of the city, where flames tore through suburban streets. Evacuation orders were in place for about 70,000 people across the area. A large number of people who did not heed warnings to leave had suffered significant injuries. In a related development, Malaysia's Foreign Ministry, through its Consulate General in Los Angeles, the United States, is closely monitoring the wildfires in the city. The ministry noted that no reports involving Malaysians have been received so far. It said it will continue to monitor developments related to the wildfires and provide updates as necessary. The ministry also said Malaysians residing in or visiting the affected areas are urged to exercise caution, adhere to local evacuation orders, and stay informed through official updates. It also encouraged Malaysians in Los Angeles to register their presence via the e-consular system and maintain close contact with the Consulate General for updates and assistance. Next up in sports, Aaron and Wei Yik survive American scare at Malaysia Open. Starting off our sports segment today, national men's doubles duo Aaron Chia and So Wui Yik overcame a tense opening round scare at the Malaysia Open 2025, recovering from a mid-match slump to claim their second round place by eliminating American pair Chen Ziyi and Presley Smith. The fifth seeds Aaron and Wui Yik got off their season opener campaign in Axiata Arena to a bright start by taking the first set 21-15. However, they appeared to lose their focus in the second set, allowing Ziyi and Smith to tie the score after losing 16-21. However, the world number 6 pair quickly found their groove as they stormed into the second round with a commanding 21-10 win in 57 minutes. Chances for the national camp to advance to the next round is still feasible, with Aaron and Wui Yik scheduled to take on the world number 27 from Taiwan, Li Fangqi and Li Fangzhen. Then in English football, West Ham United have sacked head coach Julian Lopetegui, with the London side 14th in their standings after 20 matches. The 58-year-old Spaniard was appointed in May on a reported 2-year contract to implement a more expansive playing style at West Ham after several seasons of pragmatism under David Moyes. The former Spain, Real Madrid and Wolverhampton Wanderers managers signed a reported 2-year contract after Moyes left the club by mutual consent. West Ham were knocked out of the League Cup 5-1 by Liverpool in September, and in their last 2 Premier League games suffered back-to-back losses to Liverpool and Manchester City, conceding 9 goals. Lopetegui's backroom staff have also left the club with immediate effect. And according to British media reports, Graham Potter was in talks to replace Lopetegui, and the former Chelsea and Brighton and Hove Albion manager is expected to take charge of their FA Cup third-round game at Aston Villa on Friday. Elsewhere in Indonesia, where it announced the appointment of former Netherlands forward Patrick Kluivert as their new men's national team coach, a move to bolster their bid to qualify for the 2026 World Cup. The appointment of former AC Milan, Ajax and Barcelona player Kluivert follows the sacking of South Korean coach Shin Tae-yong on Monday. Kluivert will take charge of Indonesia until 2027, with an option to extend further. Indonesia are third in their World Cup group after 6 of 10 matches, a point behind Australia in the battle for the second automatic spot in the finals. Since ending his playing career in 2008, Kluivert has held various roles, including coach of Turkish side Adana Demirspor and the Dutch Caribbean island of Curacao. He had served as director of football for Paris Saint-Germain, assistant coach of the Netherlands and Cameroon, and manager of the youth team of Ajax. Kluivert will be unveiled in Jakarta on Sunday and will be joined in Indonesia by 2 assistant coaches, fellow Dutchman Alex Pastoor and Denny Lanzat. His first competitive match in charge will be Indonesia's trip to Australia for a World Cup qualifier on 20th March. Dani Olmo and Pau Victor will be allowed to play for Barcelona after Spain's National Sports Council CSD allowed the La Liga club to provisionally register the duo 4 days after Spanish football authorities rejected their requests. Barcelona signed the 2 players in the close season, but due to the club being unable to meet La Liga's wage cap, they were allowed to be registered for the first half of the season only. On Saturday, the Spanish Football Federation and La Liga had rejected a request to register them both for the second half of the season. 2 courts had also previously rejected Barcelona's requests, but the CSD upheld the club's appeal, stating that professional athletes have the right to a sporting career in accordance with their potential, with guarantees and certainty. However, the verdict came after Hansi Flick announced the squad for Barcelona's Spanish Super Cup semi semi-final against Athletic Bilbao, with neither Olmo nor Victor named among the starters or substitutes. The club had managed to register Olmo after long-term injuries kept first-team players out of the squad for months, allowing Barca to allocate a portion of wages to register the player. Moving on to tennis, US top seed Ben Shelton's preparation for the Australian Open was dealt with a blow with an upset loss to Czech teen sensation Jakub Mensik at the Auckland Classic. Playing his first match in nearly 2 months, world number one Shelton was beaten 7-6, 4-6 and 7-5 in the second round by the powerful Mensik. The clash of two of the world's premier young players ended after more than 2.5 hours when Shelton's serve was broken for the first time in the 12th game of the third set. The 22-year-old American, who received a bye through the first round, served strongly but could not match the consistency of his 19-year-old opponent's ground strokes. Left-hander Shelton will have little match play under his belt heading to the Grand Slam tournament in Melbourne, having not previously played since representing the US in the Davis Cup nearly 2 months ago. World number 49, Mensik faces a quarterfinal against the highest-ranked player remaining in Auckland, Portuguese 7th seed Nuno Borges. Elsewhere, China's rising star and world number 5 Qin Wen-zheng brushed aside Alina Svitolina of Ukraine in an exhibition game ahead of the Australian Open at Melbourne Park. Last year's US Open finalist eased to a 6-2, 6-2 victory against the former world number 3 in just over an hour. In motorsport, Saudi Arabian Yazid Al-Raji won the 4th stage of the Dakar Rally, in which 5-time winner Nasser Al-Attiyah dropped to 7th overall. Al-Raji led throughout in his overdrive, finishing in 4 hours, 26 minutes and 40 seconds, 4 minutes and 51 seconds ahead of South African Henk Lettergan, the overall leader. Lettergan's overall lead shrank to 6 minutes and 54 seconds, with Al-Raji again his closest rival after moving up from 4th. 5 times winner Nasser Al-Attiyah hit trouble, the latest front-runner to struggle in the Saudi Arabian sands after the departures of Sebastian Loeb and defending champion Carlos Sainz earlier in the week. Al-Attiyah had to wait for Dacia teammate Cristina Gutierrez, who gave him the part from her car. In the motorcycle category, Australian Red Bull KTM rider Daniel Sanders stretched his lead to 13 minutes and 26 seconds over Spaniard Tosha Scarina after a 4th stage win out of 5. Sanders completed the stage in 5 hours, 10 minutes and 33 seconds, 15 seconds ahead of Scarina on a Honda. Chilean Jose Ignacio Cornejo Florimo was 3rd, 7 minutes 49 seconds behind the winner. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, ASEAN unity highlighted in push for greater Malaysia-Indonesia partnership. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching. I'm Renee Fong. Have a pleasant afternoon.